Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? There's some lunacy going on over in the chat. Peter McKenna was here at 1:20 this morning. Gary beat you to it this time. Good morning, all. And then Gary came back at the still ungodly hour of 2:59 in the morning. Good morning, Peter. I'll give you this one, but there's always tomorrow. You better set your alarm. And then at 3 o'clock, my life, Gary Muirhead's bladder must be playing absolute havoc. At 3:07, he said, "Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Mark, for a very interesting, informative, emotional show last night. The two guests, Mark and Mike, were fantastic. Another award-winning show. Yes, I do think it was award-winning. Not for me, obviously, for the two guys involved. Do want to say a very quick thank you to both Mike Keogh and Mark Mates for last night for giving up their time to do that event. And I will very quickly remind you there is another IDE event on this evening, Inner City Demolition featuring John F. Hunt. Go over to the IDE website, look for the events page. You'll find exactly where you need to be for that. Lots of stuff to get through. I want to point out that you see this thing going across the bottom here. We're really pushing hard now on the Demolition Insider Substack. It's a bit where I write about stuff that maybe not everybody needs to see, if you know what I mean. It's Demolition Insider, not as in the drink, but insider. .substack.com. I'll leave that up on the screen anyway. For those of you that's been watching this show for any length of time, you'll know that the end of the show has grown progressively longer as we've gone along with each passing month. Today, the beginning of the show is going to be a little bit extended, so you'll have to bear with me. First of all, I want to show you this. A couple of months ago, I had a message from a young guy who was working on a degree, and he asked me would I participate in some questions about demolition and all that kind of thing, very specifically related to the CMA investigation, which I was more than happy to do. Last night, got a message from him that says, "Good evening, Mark. Hope you're well. Just thought I would message you to say thank you for your assistance and knowledge with my dissertation. I've just received my grade and I've successfully passed my dissertation with a grade I'm extremely happy with. And I've passed my master's degree. Once I've received my feedback, I will share the completed major project paper. Thank you again." So, well done to Joe Watson on passing that. I'm glad to be of assistance. Just going to check the chat because we've had a few people arrive out. There is Dan Cullen. Morning, Dan. Jim Turner's here as well. Good morning, fellas. And Dan is saying, great show last night. There is so much involved in the technical side of damage building demolition. There really is. And I thought the two guys displayed that very, very well. Now, I said the beginning of the show was going to be a little extended. Here's another thing that you need to be aware of. I say you need to be aware of, it will not come as any surprise to you whatsoever. So this is Construction Index this morning. Labour's manifesto commitment to build 1.5 million new houses by 2030 is likely to be missed, the Chancellor has admitted. Shocker. Chancellor Rachel Reeves' spring statement revealed that there are now expected to be fewer than 1.3 million cumulative net additions to the UK housing stock over the 5-year period to March 2030. And according to her, the gap between 1.5 million and 1.3 million is touching distance. It's 200,000, love. 200,000. Yeah. Missed by a bloody mile. No great surprise. No great surprise in that at all. Something we've been discussing on this show for quite some time. There's Gary back again at a more reasonable time. There's Mark Whiting as well. I will press all your good morning buttons in just a moment. But there's one other thing that I need to address, and it is this. As you know, the National Federation of Demolition Contractors is currently on the hunt for a new CEO, as the incumbent, Duncan Riddell, shuffles towards the exit in about a month or so. And according to a few of my sources, there is one name that is being mentioned in dispatches. Now, I can't say that name, partly because it leaves an acrid metallic taste in my mouth, and partly because I think if I say it, it could well summon a demon. However, I will give you a few clues, and those clues should serve as a timely reminder for the NFDC to think long and hard about their selection before it's too late. The person in question is the only NFDC president in their entire history that has ever needed to call an extraordinary general meeting to address member apathy. That same person went on to be the president of the Institute of Demolition Engineers in a period that marks the IDE's lowest ebb. Not content with that, this same person then threw his hat into the ring for a potential second term as NFDC president, as if one wasn't enough. He was passed over, not once, but twice in just the past few years. So I urge, beg, implore the NFDC not to be too hasty in their selection of their next CEO. In fact, if you'd care to take a look at demolitionnews.com this morning, I've actually provided the NFDC with a checklist of all the facets required of a new CEO. Let us all hope and pray that they take heed. Now, with all of that being said, yes, shall we crack on? Shall we crack on? I think we probably should. So without further ado, let me get that off the screen. I can press some buttons in the background. Yes, with all that being said, let me fire up the question of the day, roll the intro, and get this show on the road. Like this. It is Thursday, the 27th of March. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition and the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. In today's show, Develon dealers get the job done. And if anyone from Develon is actually watching, I noticed when I played the intro, I'd spelled your name wrong. I apologise. There should not be an M for mother, in the name Develon. I can only apologise. It's quite early and I had a late night. Please forgive me. We're going deep on cat mining trucks. We're going to feature Takeuchi's latest mini marvel, and Dynaset sucks, but in a good way. Plus, in my morning monologue today, the 7 stages of recession. Bit like the 7 stages of grief, but with a minor difference. There we are. Before we get to all that, there is a small matter of today's mystery machine to decipher, and I can tell you I am back in the lead. Back in the lead with just a few rounds to go. So, yes, let's have a look at that, shall we? Before we get to that, just want to say that great minds think alike. The NFDC top job sounds like a poisoned chalice, which is precisely the headline that I've used when I put it over on Demolition News, oddly enough. Mystery Machine, here we go. Yep, I've done nothing with this one either. This is as nature intended. This is how this machine rolled off the production line. I can't tell you what country because that would probably narrow it down a little bit too much, but that's what I need you to identify. Yeah. What have you got on that? As always, I would like a make and a model. That's what we need. If you want to be in it, you've got to, well, if you want to win it, you've got to be in it. So we need you to identify exactly what that might be. Keep the guesses coming in throughout the show, unless somebody gets it straight away, and we will see how we go on that. Well, I tell you what, let me take away, Chris Ford is here as well. Good morning, Chris. Morning late again. I'll stand on the naughty step. Yes, you do that and go and think about what you've done. And Ken Hatcher is here as well. There he is. He's got cloud, apparently. Lovely and sunny here. Not overly warm, but it's lovely and sunny here. I will get around to pressing all those buttons in just a moment. But first of all, let me quickly remind you of today's question of the day, which looks like this. Yeah, question of the day today comes, no great surprise, comes once again from our resident quizmaster, Mr. Gary Muirhead. And his question is this: what is a thing that you've tried but really regretted? Now, when I saw tried, I immediately thought of food. So I was thinking about some of the weird things I've eaten over the years, like snake, and alligator, and kangaroo. Wouldn't necessarily rush back to eat any of them again, although kangaroo wasn't too bad. But I wouldn't say I regret it. They're all, as far as I'm concerned, they're all part of life's rich tapestry. So I'm going to take that expression, what is a thing that you tried that you didn't like, and I'm going to say, I'm going to go completely left field here, escape rooms. Okay? A few years ago for my birthday, one of my daughters decided it'd be fun for the entire family to go and spend some time in one of these escape rooms. It was it was bloody awful. I hated every minute of it. But as she'd got it for my birthday, I made out like I was having a ball. Oh, the fun we were having. Hated every minute of it, but I pretended that I liked it. My act must have been so convincing because a few months later, the family booked me onto another one. I've had to tell them now. If any of them watching, you already know this. I hate escape rooms. I don't. Why do I want to go and spend a couple of hours trying to get myself out of a container? It makes no sense to me. I'm not into it. So, what about you? What is a thing that you've tried that you really regret? I'm going to go back to Ken Hatcher. Stayed in the college a bit longer doing electronic engineering. Left after 6 months to drive a digger. Yeah, that would do it for you. That would do it for you. I can tell you that Ken has also taken a stab at our mystery machine. Ken, do you really think? Do you really think that I would do that? Do you really think I'd go with the JCB3CX, which I think everybody could pretty much identify blindfold? It is not the JCB3CX. Let me show you a bit more. Now, admittedly, by showing you a bit more, it probably looks even more like a JCB3CX, but I promise you it is not. It is not the JCB3CX. Keep the guesses coming. Let me go over to here because I need to press this. I don't think we talk enough about dealers. I'm not going to start now, but I don't think we talk enough about dealers because local dealers can make or break a brand. Think back to the experience that Gary Muirhead has had with SMT GB Scotland. Absolutely top notch. And yet there are dealers that let the side down. I'm very pleased that Develon has decided to feature some of their dealers in their latest videos because I do think, as I say, can make or break a brand. Let's have a look.
When I call, they react. Every week I have to call them for different things. They'll usually get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night to be told about the incident. Normally by lunchtime the next day, they'll have me another machine.
It'll be 8, 9 o'clock and I'll call Joe Barry or Tom or Randy and they pick up the phone. We need parts are there next day. We have issues with the equipment. They're swapping it out with something else.
Just from a phone call, they were able to log into that machine, adjust up the pressures and flows. They were able to get it reconfigured over the phone, and 10 minutes later, we're back in business.
They really listen and care about their customers' needs and requests versus some of our competitor dealers that we've worked with. We were just getting tons and tons of snow this past winter, and we were seriously under-equipped. And so what I did is I made a phone call. We need a loader, we need it ASAP, and they brought us one within the next day. They allowed us to get what we needed to do done on time.
The salesman for Wilson Equipment, he personally comes to the job site, sometimes daily, just to make sure everything is running smooth, everything's operating properly. If we have an issue or a code or anything that happens, he's right there personally to either address it himself or make sure that their service department sends out a mechanic.
Top job. Now, going back to the mystery machine, let's have a look. Ken Hatcher went for the 3CX. Jim Turner thought he'd spotted what I was up to. He hadn't, but he did go for the 4CX. It's not. Dan Cullen went for the Bull HD 100s. Good shout, but it's not one of those. He's also gone for the Bull HD 76. Not one of those. It's not a bull at all. Not a bull at all. Jim Turner is also going with that Bull 3CX copy. It's not. He's also going for the Ace 3CX copy. It's not that either. Do we have any more on there? Dan Cullen is going for the New Holland LS 180. It's not. Lou Carney has just joined us. Morning, Lou. Thank you very much indeed for being here. If we can have this weather for plant works, make that happen, would you? Let me show you a bit more mystery machine. There you are. That's what we're looking at there. And I want to go back to this because Jim Turner, my mates at work, love escape rooms, never tried it. Jim, listen, I realise it's a horses for courses thing, but it's quite easily a couple of the worst hours of my life. Yeah, my family bought into it. Yeah, I mean, basically, we were supposed, the first one, which I remember most vividly, we were supposedly in a kind of a haunted house, and there was a ghost giving us clues on how we needed to get out of one room and get into another. And my family quickly descended into something like a farcical version of a Miss Marple episode, while I stood on the sidelines thinking, would you not just please grow up and calm down a bit? We're in a container on an industrial estate. Let's not get carried away. Yeah, I have a vivid imagination, but I couldn't get my head around that at all. Let's have a look. What else do we have here? Let me put this back up again. Dan Cullen going for the New Holland B95. It's not. Jim Turner going for the Lugon backhoe loader. It's not. Not a JCB 4DX. It's not a JCB at all. And it's not the 3DX either. Not a JCB. Let me show you a bit more. There you are. Admittedly, it looks a lot like a JCB, but then if it's a backhoe loader, the chances are it probably will, but it's not a JCB. Nobody's even got the right make yet, so keep the guesses coming. We're going to be back with a little, and it is a very short film from Takeuchi in just a moment. After this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, Takeuchi, new machine, 38-second film, like this. Love the effect they've used on that with the black and white with just the Takeuchi red. Top job, fellas, and bloody good machines as well. What do we got here? Jim Turner says, I like problem solving, so I think I might enjoy it. You might. Listen, that's why the question of the day exists. And that's why we get different answers and, we all come in from different angles. But I've got to tell you, not a fan. Not a fan. I couldn't separate the reality of where I was. I think that was one of my biggest problems. And I know I went on a demolition site down in Reading a few years ago, and there was an old shopping centre, like a shopping mall, that had closed down, and before it was being redeveloped, they'd actually turned it into a zombie experience. So you went in there and you were given, I don't know, paintball guns or something, and you were hunted by zombies. And the people that I was speaking to on site was, oh, it's brilliant, it's real. No, it's not. You're in a shopping mall being chased by people that are being paid minimum wage to look like zombies. I'm not going to be convinced by that. I'm not going to buy into that. It's me. I know it's me. Dan Cullen, going back to the Mystery Machine, says it could be a Shandong 180. It could. It's not, but it could. Ken Hatcher's going for the Hydramec 102. It's not one of those. Chris Ford going for the Mystery Machine as the Lewis Badger. It's not the Lewis Badger. Let me show you a little bit more. There you are. No great surprise. It's got wheels at both ends. I think you probably guessed that already. We'll come back to that in just a moment. We're going deep on Caterpillar mining trucks immediately after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, we're about to spend 5 minutes in the company of the mining experts over at Caterpillar, talking about their mining trucks. Enjoy.
I'm Mike Dimmick, And I'm with Rob Shea today to talk about Cat large mining trucks. Rob, thanks for joining us.
Hey, you're welcome.
What makes the Cat mining truck different, special?
So the first thing that we target is the lowest cost per ton. One of the ways that we do that is by really focusing on maximizing the productivity of the asset, but it's also about making sure that it's efficient in terms of weight and efficient in terms of the usage and consumption of components and parts. By minimizing those costs and maximizing the production, you get the most out of that asset.
What are customers today looking for when they're trying to put together a hauling fleet?
First thing, of course, is the productive capability of that fleet. Then on top of that, there's a large focus, as you can imagine, on emissions reduction. How efficient is this product at that job? And what can I do with that in future to maximize the amount of production that I'm getting and minimizing the amount of emissions that I'm producing from that asset? And the third thing is automation.
And so there are many needs depending on the customer. We really have the right truck for the right customer.
That's correct. We have mechanical drive for certain applications, we have diesel electric drive for certain applications, and even in amongst that you have a number of options, whether it's for lower regulated countries or tier 4 countries. And part of that also, of course, is selecting the right truck body. Some customers want to maximize the payload capacity of the truck as best as they can. So we have a design for that on our 793s called the Max Payload Body or the MP body. And then we have a number of other designs, including our high performance body, our HP body. It's slightly heavier, but it's designed to actually be able to be rebuilt.
We're constantly looking for ways to improve on the trucks. What have we done to make them safer for operators?
One of the most exciting things I think that we've developed recently on our next generation of mining trucks is anti-lock braking system and dynamic stability control. We've never seen that before on a mining truck, and it works in a similar fashion to what you would expect in your on-road automobile. It's really introduced what I think is an unprecedented level of safety and control for a large mining truck. We have a 360 vision option as well now for our next-gen trucks, which is the top-down view. The anti-rollback feature prevents the truck from moving in a direction opposite to the gear that's selected. So it will actually hold the brake and stop the truck from rolling backwards.
We say our machines are built to be rebuilt. How does that work with Cat mining trucks?
One of the things that we're always trying to do is ensure that we get the maximum longevity out of our products. We've got some trucks out there that are operating at over 200,000 hours. There's a number of different things that go into that. One of them is the durability of the frame, the structures of the machine, and the other is actually being able to just support the components to be able to be economically and efficiently rebuilt and reused. So we provide Cat reman for a lot of our components. Our dealers also are supported in the rebuild of components in their region, and that is not only a fraction of the price of a new component, but it's also much better from an emissions standpoint in terms of how intensive it is with our resources. Part of that also is developing retrofitability and kits of components and parts that are newer and updated and either improve in performance or improve longevity, and being able to retrofit those to older machines so we can also continue their life. And this is a really important part of helping customers on their journey to lower emissions, because in the short term, they're able to continue rebuilding the products that they have until there's more certainty about what the future is going to look like, not just globally, but also in their region.
If you had just a couple of minutes to sell somebody on why they should have a Cat mining truck, what would your pitch be?
We offer the lowest cost per ton. We offer the highest productivity in the class for across the range. We provide the best value to our customers for those assets. They're built to be rebuilt, as you said, and we support our customers to maintain and continue running those machines for a long lifespan. We're supporting our customers in the transition to low emissions or zero emissions for some customers, and we're on that journey with them. So regardless of what a customer is looking for in a truck or where they are in the world, we have a solution that we can offer to help them achieve their goals.
Rob Shea, thanks for joining us. And we have a video to show you right now so you can find out more about Cat large mining trucks.
We'll come back to all things related to that in just a moment. Come back to the mystery machine, rather. Jim Turner says that's the perfect way to build machines. You buy it once, look after it, and keep rebuilding it, hopefully being able to upgrade it each time. It's reconditioned. Yeah, absolutely. I know Caterpillar are making a big play on that. Obviously, it's their 100th anniversary. They do know their way around. They do know their way around the machines, he said, stating the bleeding obvious. And yes, they are certainly doing that, built to be rebuilt. Ken Hatcher, likewise stating the bleeding obvious. Cat is a big company, a multi-billion pound company. Now, we've had a bit of a confluence. It's wrong, but we've had a coming together. Over on Instagram, the Demo MC reckons that our mystery machine might be a Komatsu WB93. It is not. Coincidentally, though, Chris Ford said exactly the same thing. The Komatsu WB93 R-5, and he also went for the -8 as well. It's not a Komatsu at all. Dan Cullen going for the WB97S, not a Komatsu. Let me show you a little bit more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we are. There's a little bit more. There's a bit of front end. Does that help at all? Does that help at all? Can you... Let me take this away. Can you imagine accepting the role of a CEO of the NFTC and find on your desk a list of things to do? Sort out Didcart and Redcart. And there's this bloke called Mark Anthony. If you could also sort that. Oddly enough, Gary, and I know you've only just typed that, my LinkedIn, over on my LinkedIn, I can tell you that the chief financial officer of the NFTC was just looking at my profile. Now, I don't know whether she was watching this. If she was, good morning. Good morning, Leslie. I don't suppose she was watching this at all, but yeah, interesting. Speak to anyone in the corridors of power at the NFTC, and they swear blind they don't watch this show, and yet they seem oddly aware of what we're doing. So let me have a look. What else have we got on our mystery machine? We've got is that a Shanmon? Don't even know what a Shanmon is. A 388H. No, it's not one of those. There's another guess on the Komatsu WB97S. Ken Hatcher's going for the Deswell. You guys are coming up with brands I've never even heard of. Never even heard of. It's not one of those. That's what it looks like. Keep the guesses coming. I tell you what, let me just make sure. I've only got one more frame I can show you before giving the game away. So let me take that away, and we'll come back to that in just a moment. We're going to be back with Dynaset in just a moment. Just very quickly, our friend, the Demo MC, and can I just say, the Demo MC sounds like a British rapper. He is the Demo MC. Do the hands thing. Oh, yeah, listen, I'm down with the kids. It's not what you suggested. He reckons it might be a high dreamer. It's not a high dreamer, but I can see where you're coming from on that. If you've been watching this show for any length of time, you will know that I love me a bit of Dynaset. But Dynaset sucks. You see what I mean? Dynaset, never mind. Mystery Machine. We are almost at the close of the main part of this morning show. I can tell you we've got. Let me just go over to this. Gary Muirhead says, I see they're going to be celebrating their 100th birthday at Balmer. I assume you're talking about Caterpillar, but you could well be talking about Dynaset. certainly Caterpillar is celebrating its 100th birthday at Balmer. I've not been invited. Shocker. What else have we got here? Ken Hatcher reckons it could be an XCMG backhoe loader. I can see where you're going with that, and it's not. Let me get Ken out of the way because this is the last bit I can show you without giving the game away entirely. I mean, you all know what type of machine it is. And Big Boot 666, Big Boot 666. 666, the number of the beast. I'm not going to sing it for you, but yeah, no, it's not a New Holland. It's not a New Holland, I'm afraid. Let's have a look. Let me take that out of the way. Yeah, because we're going on our mission to Munich immediately after this.
Think you can stop what we do? I doubt it. We've got the energy, we'll tell you all about it.
I have a confession. If you've ever been to Balmer, you'll know that literally tens of thousands, and I do mean that, tens of thousands of people walk around holding bags from a single company. That company has one of the biggest stands at the show. Yet in all my years of going to Balmer, and I think this may well be my 10th, possibly, I've never once set foot on their stand. I've never once carried one of their bags. Not because I had a falling out with them, it's just because I don't really know what they do. But that company is Perry, and this is what they're up to.
Think harder. Build smarter. Innovate to make the impossible possible. Let your visions fly high for high-flying expertise. Build outside the box. Think of simple solutions. Develop systems that unite formwork and scaffolding. Come up with flexible solutions that make hard tasks feel easy. If you are to create a new scaffolding system, aim to create the mother of scaffolding systems. Use system-compatible add-ons to add confidence to any challenge. Dig deeper for the best infrastructure solutions. Taking responsibility means taking action. Success stories we write together. Get inspired to get going at Bauma 2025. Perry, we are shaping the future with you.
I do need to say a very quick thank you to the fine folks at MB Crusher for sponsoring this part of the show, like this.
Hey, turn this TV off. Ain't want my type activity, but don't you get involved. Hey, what? How many shit I seen? Send them off. Take a risk or take a trip. You know I'm tripping for my dog.
So yeah, I've won. I've won the mystery machine yet again. I've had a really good month. I'm just going to put my points down because they all count. That's me, 3 points. Let me throw it up on the screen and I'll tell you exactly what it is you're looking at. There you are. It's a Lon King. Not long, it's Lon, L-O-N King. Lon King 84C is what that is. And yes, it does look like all the other backhoe loaders that you mentioned. So 3 points to me. Back to the chat. Excuse me 1 second. Chris Fall says New Holland. It's not. Coverage has gone crap. I'm sure that's you. I will apologise for my coverage yesterday on this show. And the tail end of the show, I did warn you that the Wi-Fi and the broadband connection was looking very sketchy. It did get very sketchy to the point where I didn't even bother to produce a cut of yesterday's after show chat. Gary says, sorry, yes, Caterpillar, big celebration. Don't accept any cake from the mark. It may choke you. I'm at the point now where there's a lot of people I don't accept cake from, but you're absolutely right. Mick has just joined us. Good morning, Mick. How's the hound? I hope he's not peeing on the downstairs people. And this does tickle me. Who is Leslie from the NFDC? She's now looking at my LinkedIn profile too. Quite possibly drawing up a hit list. She is the chief financial officer, but as she is office based, many would argue that she is the power behind the throne. Presidents come and go, and apparently CEOs come and go. She remains. I'll leave you to make of that what you will, but yes, she is. Yeah, and I maybe she's just looking for people with a big profile on LinkedIn, but maybe she's seen me and decided, let's have a look at all the people that are talking to this pillock. And there we are. She's found you. So my apologies for that, Gary. Nick says, not yet, but the day is young. Yes. Hound, behave yourself. That pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, then please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. And I hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I shall return immediately after this. There are apparently 7 stages of grief: shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance. Personally, in my own dealings with grief, I've generally gone directly from denial to depression, skipping all the other stages. I didn't pass go. I didn't collect £200. It occurs to me that the demolition and construction industry's response to a downturn in workloads or a wider economic recession follows many of those same stages. Although there is one notable difference. Rather than acceptance, there's cannibalism. I'll get to that in a moment, but let's start with those other stages. Appropriately, the most surprising response to tougher times is shock. Now, quite how anyone is shocked by a downturn in this industry is beyond my understanding. Ours is a cyclical industry in which good follows bad, high follows lows, tick follows tock, follows tick, follows tock, as they used to say in the Guinness advert. Wherever we are on the industry's fortune cycle, just look back 5 or 10 years and you'll see precisely what will happen next. And yet, each time the market turns, there are company owners and industry veterans staring at their books as though some divine force has unexpectedly turned off the tap. Perhaps it's optimism bias, perhaps it's willful ignorance, or perhaps it's the result of an industry that, at its core, doesn't actually plan much beyond the next contract. Whatever the cause, companies are often caught off guard, despite the warning signs blinking like hazard lights on a foggy motorway. I can tell you from experience that the next stage is no better. You can deny it all you wish, but when the industry's house of cards begins to collapse under its own weight, denial just doesn't work. There are many who believe they can work their way out of a hole, that they can cut corners to survive, that their past reputation will somehow shield them from the present reality. They tell themselves that the dip is temporary, that things will pick up next quarter, that a big contract is just around the corner. The problem is, so does everyone else. Of all the stages, anger is perhaps the most understandable. You've worked hard, followed all the rules, abided by the regulations, and kept your nose clean. And then, without warning, some outside influence rips the rug from under you. Maybe it's a recession. Maybe it's a change in government policy. Maybe a once loyal client has slashed their budget, had their heads turned, or gone under entirely. You've got every right to be angry. Angry at the economists and the politicians, angry at the industry, angry at the world. But anger won't pay the bills. It won't keep the machines running or your workforce employed. But that doesn't stop many from railing against the unfairness of it all, even as the walls close in. The next stage in grief and in construction is bargaining. Your company is set to, let me do that again, your company is set up to demolish tower blocks or to build homes. But with workloads shriveling and the bills mounting up, there's a temptation to become all things to all men in pursuit of that next paycheck. Suddenly, you're not demolishing tower blocks, you're demolishing toilet blocks just to keep the wheels turning. There's nothing inherently wrong with diversification, but there's a problem when it's done out of desperation rather than strategy. A company built to handle multi-million-pound projects can't survive long-term on a starvation diet of bite-sized contracts. Overhead costs don't shrink just because the jobs do. You've tried everything and none of it has worked. Little wonder that the depression starts to set in. You start to feel empty, deeply sad and utterly alone. Where you were once gregarious, attending all the industry functions and being an active participant in the sector, you withdraw to lick your wounds in solitude. Depression in an industry like this doesn't just manifest in individuals, it spreads across companies like a virus. Morale plummets, investment dries up. The very people who once saw the industry as a community begin to see it as a burden. When depression takes hold, innovation stalls, ambition fades, and the sector as a whole starts to shrink into itself, waiting for a better day that may never come. Testing is the process of trying to find solutions that offer a means of dealing with loss. It's also the means by which companies attempt to diversify, belatedly. Some firms pivot successfully, finding new niches, reinventing themselves in ways that not only sustain them, but position them for future success. But if the entire market is down, there is no diversification to be had. You just find yourself chasing red herrings down blind alleys, throwing good money after bad in the hope that something will stick. And when it doesn't, the final transformation begins. In grief terms, the final stage is acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean that people feel okay about a loss. It just means that they realize that the loss is their new reality. They understand that life will not continue as it did before, but it will go on. In demolition and construction, however, there is rarely acceptance. Instead, there's cannibalism. A few months before the recession hit, you were happily cross-hiring equipment to local competitors, forming joint ventures with other rivals to cope with all the work coming your way, and you were attending industry events. In part to tell everyone just how well you were doing. But as workloads ease and margins tighten, you surrender to your base instincts. It begins with bad-mouthing your former joint venture partners to clients, questioning their competence, their health and safety credentials, and their financial stability. And it gets worse from there. You cut prices to win the work you needed to keep your wheels turning and your men and women employed, but also to ensure that your rivals don't get the job. As the recession deepens, no back is left unstabbed. The industry's former battle cry of all for one and one for all gives way to cries of every man for himself. And then, when the clouds of recession begin to part and the sun emerges once again, we're left to count the cost of our oh-so-predictable race to the bottom. An industry divided, many of its number fallen by the wayside, prices that have barely risen in a decade, and a pile of bones as evidence of what happens when the industry consumes itself. And yet, as predictable as the fall is, so too is the rise. Those who survive will dust themselves off, patch up old alliances or form new ones, and convince themselves that the worst is behind them. They'll forget the lessons, ignore the warnings, and continue as if nothing happened until it does. Again. There you are. Let me go over to the chat. What's going on in the chat? Let's see what everybody's saying for themselves. Long King was in the back of my mind, but couldn't get it. That's why the Mystery Machine is as infuriating as it is. Gary Muirhead, I was just about to type that in, Dan. Yes, I'm sure. Gary Muirhead, is the suitcase and backpack all packed and sitting at the front door waiting for Palmer? It's not. Not that you need to know the intricate details of my life, but we've got a shed at the end of the garden, and we use it for storing stuff that just basically gets in the way. And we've got several big suitcases, and they live in the shed. We came back from Holland. Myself and Fred came back from the Netherlands, and we unpacked the bag or unpacked one of the suitcases, and it's still sat in the dining room, waiting to be packed again. Doesn't seem a lot of point in putting it away together and get it back again. So yes. If your company is run on credit, you have to take whatever is in front of you. But if the company is secure, you can pick and choose the work that's worth doing. The problem is, and you're right, Jim, you're absolutely right. The problem is that the modern construction world and the modern demolition world very much runs on credit. You've got these multi-million, in some cases, multi-billion pound companies. They're about to start work on a project, and they do it against loan finance. Now, for a while, loan finance was very, very cheap, and you could do that. Look at the machines. Whenever there's a collapse of a company, particularly in the demolition industry, because I tend to follow those most closely. The biggest debtor is usually the HMRC. The second biggest is usually an equipment finance company, be that an in-house one like a JCB Finance or something like that, or an external finance company. Guaranteed. And I've got to the point now. I mean, I've got to be honest, I don't actually read much in the way of construction press anymore anyway. Keep an eye on the headlines, but I don't really look at the magazines because, but whenever I see a photograph, that old traditional photograph, and I can't believe people are still doing this. Here's the dealer salesman shaking hands with the guy that's just bought the machines. Has he? Or is there a sodding great finance bill sat in his back pocket? Often the case. Just on the subject. Lou says, when are you flying out to Balmer? I'm flying out on some ungodly hour on the Sunday morning. We are due there the first thing Sunday to go off and spend some time with Lee Bear. So that's the answer. Mick says, read a little while ago, read a little write-up regarding ISG. If correct, it said the government was already looking into and seeking other contractors to plug the gap. Depending on when the demise of ISG. This to me stinks. Why didn't the government make this known to the poor sods who rode, and more importantly, the workforce? It's a good question, but I do wonder about that. When Carillion collapsed like a house of cards, whenever it was 5-6 years ago, obviously I was spending a lot of time speaking to Neil Edwards. It wasn't Neil that said this, funnily enough, but speaking to Neil quite a lot. There were a couple of companies that were named as, Carillion's gone, the next will be. And I was told two companies, one of which was ISG. And I thought, well, I'll store that away in the back of my brain. A couple of weeks later, when the true depth of the collapse of Carillion started to make itself known, I was driving along, listening to Radio 4. I'm an adult. I'm allowed to do that. And a guy came on. I can't remember who he was, but he was a bigwig in the industry. And they said, oh, this is terrible, biggest collapse ever in the construction industry, one of the biggest in national history. This could never happen again. And he said on the radio, ISG will be next. The signs quite clearly were there. The truth is, the industry has a very, very short memory. Goes back to the discussion we were having about the CMA the other day. When you find 10 companies have been found guilty of collusion to the point where they've racked up £60 million in fines, and then 2 years later, the government, i.e. the very client that they'd ripped off 2 years ago or previously, are signing them up for more. Does that make any sense to you? And there's a thing that happens. There's a thing that happens when a company starts to go down, and I've seen this a lot, particularly when there's a personal relationship between the contractor and their suppliers or their supply chain. There's a phone call that goes in. Look, you might be hearing that we're in trouble. We've just got this project coming in. We're absolutely hunky-dory, nothing to worry about, but we do need a bit of extended credit just to get us over this hump. And because they've known each other for 10, 15, 20 years, the supplier says, grudgingly perhaps, all right, yeah, you're a man of your word, or you traditionally have been a man of your word. I'll buy. I'll extend the credit, and they get burned too. Now, bearing in mind, I have to be honest about this. I've never had much in the way of debt. I mean, I've probably lost a couple of £100. I guess over a period of 30 years, I've probably lost a couple of £1,000. But in one go, I've probably only lost a couple of £100. But when I'm approached by a company to work with them for the first time, first thing I do is credit check. First thing, before I've even gone back and said yes. First thing I do is credit check. Now, when you're dealing with the likes of Liebherr and Volvo and Kobelco and Hitachi and Komatsu, I don't bother. Let's be honest. To them, they could pay me out of the change they have down the back of their sofa. Not a problem. I don't bother with those. But if I get a call out of the blue from a little supplier or a little contractor, we'd like you to do this, like you to do that, credit check first and foremost. And I make my decision from there. And if there's anything going on in the background to that company, I leave it alone. Leave it alone. My most precious asset is not money, it's time. And if you find yourself getting burned by a company, if they've taken you to the cleaners and you find yourself spending hours, possibly days, a week, trying to get paid for something that you should have been paid for months ago, it's costing you money. All the time that's going on, it's actually costing you more money. So no, I won't have it. So I don't understand. I don't understand why and how people do that. I really don't. Dan says there is no I in team, but no one in this industry ever sticks together to help each other. Forget a simple thing called friends. Yeah, it and as I say, it is so evident. Okay, when the industry is doing good, and I'm thinking specifically here about the demolition industry, but this applies equally in other sectors as well. When the industry is doing hunky dory, you meet up and everyone's at the bar and we're all having a good time and patting each other on the back. Congratulations on the new machine. Well done on that job. Fantastic. And we're all pally and everything else. Things start to get tight. And then you start, and it is the first thing I normally hear is, oh, you want to keep an eye on him. He's a dodgy character. He had an accident that he swept under the rug, and he's struggling financially, and all that like bitterness just starts to bubble to the surface. And that's where we are right now. It wasn't me that coined the term cannibalism. The person that did knows who they are, but that's exactly how it works. Will we be able to meet before Baumer? I very much doubt it, Dan. And I promise your prizes are still sat beside me. It might be easy to send them to you because my diary is mad at the moment. Be up for a meet with Mick too and Nigel as well. Yeah, be lovely to do it. I've got a horrible feeling it might not happen though. Dan says, "Morning, Lou. I just bought tickets for Plant Works. Is there a chance of a pre-day tour like last one, if possible, for pictures before the crowd show up?" Lou, I'll leave you to address that. Dan, question: where did the finest go to? The finest what? Don't know. Question says, how do you politely tell the man that owns a multi-million-pound company to go away because you're listening to Demolition News? I'm sure the correct expression for that varies up and down the country. I'll tell you how we do it down my neck of the woods. Oh wait, back off. That's how we do it down here. Dan, mate, in all my years in demo, there is no such thing as friends. 98% of who you may have work from are backstabbing bastards at the end of the day. Yeah. Do you know it's and I've tried my level best to impart this to my children, with varying degrees of success, I have to say. Work is work. And it is literally every man for himself. Everyone's in it for themselves. And even those that come across as, fine, upstanding, kind, considerate, when it comes down to pound notes, chances are they'd quite happily tread on you on their way over. That's just the way it is. I wish it wasn't that way. I wish as a society we rewarded the honest and the kind and the transparent and the generous a little more than we apparently award the dishonest. But we don't. How would things look? Goes back to the CMA thing. How would things look? When they talk about procurement weighting, we're going to judge those on the tender list for this job based on experience, expertise, health and safety record, competence, and cost. What would the market look like if there was another factor called honesty in there? What would that look like? There's a couple within the demolition industry I think would shine through. AR demolition. But it'd be very different. It'd be a very different landscape. And I listen, good guys finish last, and and all of that kind of thing. But it's that notion of good guys finish last. It's a cliche because it's also true, particularly in roughy tufty businesses like demolition and construction. I wish that wasn't the case. I really do wish that wasn't the case. You even get to the point, and I think we're at that point now, because obviously we've had a year or two of bad, and things aren't getting better anytime soon. You get to the point where people are bidding for work at ridiculous prices, and as I said in that spiel, they're doing it partly to keep their own wheels turning and to keep their keep the coffers filled, but they're doing it just as much to make sure that nobody else gets it. What do you stand to gain from that? What do you stand to gain from taking a project on which you will not earn any money, just to make sure that your nearest competitor doesn't get it and not make any money either? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Dan says, I think this is the reason companies lease hire machines, so if things go belly up, they can hand everything back. Yeah. The problem you have with that is also a timing thing. The number of times, there's been machines that have kind of been tucked away a little bit to allow jobs to be finished, to hopefully get a few more quid through the front door before the liquidators arrive. Jim Turner says the world runs on credit, and it means everyone is paying more for everything, whether that's goods, services, or state things. It just means that people at the top just keep getting richer because of people's short-sightedness. Yeah. The crazy thing is, one of the things that was presented to me when I was talking about the CMA very early doors was about the way in which work is let. Clients will often delve into the financial security of the contractors they are about to employ. Have you got enough in the bank to see this job through to fruition, even if things go horribly, horribly tits up? Which obviously favours those at the very top of the tree. But the absolute truth is, regardless of how much money they've got in the bank, they're going to end up borrowing anyway. If the job requires a specialist piece of equipment, they'll finance it, or they'll cross-hire it from somebody else. It's a it's a vicious circle. And the thing I find hardest to understand with all of this is the fact that it all repeats. I've been in this business now for 36 years. I saw my first proper recession in 1990. There was a big one in 2008, 2009. I think it's fairly safe to say that we're back in another one now. So over the course of my 35 years, I've seen the highs, and there have been some massive highs, but I've also seen some of the biggest lows that this nation has ever experienced. And it does this every single time. If there's a high, there will be a low. If there's a low, there will be a high. Tick follows tock every single time. And yet every single time, those that are, they're flying along, they've just ordered the new Bentley, they've got machine finance coming out of their ears, and then they seem genuinely surprised when things take a nosedive. How are you being surprised at repetition? Some of them, it's like the old joke about the goldfish swimming around his tank. Oh look, there's a little plastic diver in here. Oh look, there's a little plastic diver in here. That's exactly how we work in this industry. We just move on and forget, and then get surprised again. It blows my. It doesn't take a lot to blow my tiny mind, but it blows my tiny mind. Dan says, like the CMA fines, still get huge projects, nothing more about it. Yeah. Is that where has the fines gone to? Well, the fines go to the CMA, if that's the question. One of the things that surprises me about this is, and maybe it will come out, I don't know, but bearing in mind, as part of the CMA investigation, they actually identified the projects upon which bid rigging, cover pricing had taken place. I realise that the CMA has had its pound of flesh, but what's to stop the clients on those jobs going back and saying, excuse me, fellas, we'd like some of that money back, please? You know, we can prove, you know, the CMA have done the homework. They've clearly proved that we have been ripped off in one way or another. We'd like our money back, please. What's to stop them? Mick says, do you think a bond system would stop all this? If an agreed price was deposited in the bank for a job, then if the client went bust, at least the contractor would get paid. Yeah. Yeah. But the issue you've got, and listen, we've walked blindly into this as an industry. We are now in a position where the client always has the whip hand. They dictate how much you're going to pay. They're going to take the lowest option and then require value engineering. You can do it for $1 million, fantastic. You've got the job. Now do it for 800,000. That's the way they do it. You know, they will require you to do it entirely at your own risk. They will give you drawings that are out of date. They will give you asbestos reports that don't actually mean anything or were conducted by somebody that never actually visited the building, and so on down the line. And there you are. Yes, there might be 1,000, 800 grand sat in a bank account, but all the while you're working on that project, you're sat there thinking, well, that ain't going to cover it now, because we've allowed that the balance. I mean, I don't think there was ever a huge amount of balance anyway, but I do think the balance has shifted. And unfortunately, when times get hard, it becomes more of a buyer's market anyway. And as a result, you end up with people, you know, possibly desperate for work, desperate for money, desperate for turnover. They will sign up almost regardless of the terms they're being required to abide by. Bangsy Ludwig. Not a name that I know, but says beautiful advice. Thank you very much indeed. Who is Bangsy Ludwig? That's what I'd like to know. Can I see them? Who do they work for? What are they doing here? Apparently he works for a Chinese mining company. Well, welcome. Wish I could do that in Chinese or Mandarin, but I can't because I'm English. But good morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Dan says, the thing is, let me try that again. The thing is, they never learn previous laws, as it's great when you on highs, but surprised when a recession. And they're all shocked. Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I find most remarkable, and like I say, I've been doing it for a long, long time now. You know, you look at these companies and they go out and they invest in, you know, fancy new machines, yeah, which is fine. You know, we all need machines, but you also visit, you know, the headquarters of a demolition company, and they're parked outside is, you know, the Maserati or the Ferrari or the top of the range Range Rover or the Bentley or whatever it might be. And you know full well that you're doing that right now because things are good. But even when things are good, you can see that things will not remain good. You know, at no point in industry or in national history have we ever had a point where we've got to a high and stayed there. We've had prolonged highs, 5, 6, possibly even 10 years. But sooner or later, as sure as eggs is eggs, it will fall off a cliff. Every single time, without fail. But you know, it's not like I'm glossing the facts here. Every single time, you know, you're sailing along like nothing could possibly go wrong, and that's precisely when it does. Dan Cullen says, very true. Why haven't the developers asked for a refund after the findings? Yeah, I wonder. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, you would have thought. I mean, is there any such thing as an open and shut case? I don't know if there is, but you would have thought that was a pretty damn close one. You know, if you could go to court and say, we have here the findings of the CMA that prove that this job was subject to collusion, and we have paid this. I'd quite like the difference between what it should have been and the amount that we actually paid. I'd like that back. And I'd quite like a bit of recompense for the fact that I was stitched up in the first place. Would that be a lot to ask? Dan says, well, asbestos is another thing in a project. One we're on at the moment. Amount of back and forth is relentless, and the change of method statements takes so much time. Yeah. I mean, you heard that last night, with Mark Bates and Mike Keogh. Talking to Mike Keogh off air, they were talking to the health and safety executive sometimes 2 and 3 times a day. And with every phone call, every discussion, every email, the chances are you're having to go back and slightly, and I'm not talking about major, but you're going back to amend the RAMs, all of which takes time, all of which costs money. So even if there is a big hefty check in the bank, it's not going to cover it. Nobody tells you that old crap in advance, do they? Made me laugh what was said by Ms. Reeves. They're putting 600 million into this building, Lark. Yet, has she any idea how many contractors have gone tits up? And who then is going to start up a building company where it's common knowledge that there is a 95% chance you're going to get screwed? Yeah. Yeah. I've never thought this before. And as I say, I have been through a few lows in the past. But I do actually think it right now. We always talk about demolition and construction as having quite a low barrier to entry. You could, as I said yesterday, you could pop out, finance a machine, and be a demolition or construction company tomorrow afternoon. But bearing in mind all that's going on in the country, in the world, in the industry, in the economy, would you? Would you? And some of what's going on, like the CMA, like the missing of the housing target, like Didcot, like Grenfell, all of this is in the headlines. It's not like you have to dig particularly deep to see the flaws with the industry. If you're 18, 19, 25 years old and you think, I need to do something, and I can get equipment finance on a backhoe loader or a mini excavator or an even bigger excavator, and I could start up in construction. Let me do a bit of homework. After about half an hour of homework, are you looking at it thinking, well, that's the career for me? Or are you thinking, well, sod that for a game of soldiers. I'd rather do anything than work in that viper's pit. I know. I think we all have the good fortune of having already done it. We're already in it. So we've had an opportunity to experience the good that, to a large degree balances out the bad. But if you're an outsider looking in, and I'll say exactly the same thing about a school leaver considering their career choices. If you're an outsider looking in, you scan the news headlines for the demolition and construction industry over the past few years, you'd run a mile. You'd run a mile rather than get hooked up with this nonsense. Dan said, as a wise man told me, tomorrow is never guaranteed. Always live for today and learn from the mistakes of yesterday. Yeah. Whoever told you that was a wise man indeed. Yeah. Should we call it? I think we probably should. That will do us for today, I think. Plenty to be getting on with. I'm going to be back again, but let me just make sure yes, it is Thursday today. So I'll be back for the final time tomorrow, 10 a.m. for yet more of the same. If you do fancy reading any of this nonsense, please do consider the thing that's going. It's that way. There you are. Just going across the screen there. demolitioninsider.substack.com. You can pay to be over there, but you can also view everything free of charge as well. So if you fancy a bit of light reading, you certainly can do that. Just a thought, I nearly hit rock bottom Just a thought, I nearly hit rock bottom a couple of years ago, then had a good win on the lottery. I would never put anything in a company in this country. Yeah, I understand it. Turns out our friend Bangsi Ludwig is actually an excavator operator from Cameroon. Really like participating in forums like this. It draws me close to good opportunities. Thank you, Mr. Mark. Well, thank you, Mr. Ludwig. Listen, it's an absolute pleasure. I don't know if we've ever had a viewer from Cameroon before. You may well be our first, and as you are our first, I do have a device for this. Bear with me 1 second. Yes, we're going to celebrate our first viewer from Cameroon with some confetti. Thanks very much for joining us, my friend, and I hope Cameroon is treating you very, very well indeed. I'm going to call it a day, Nick. Let's go and do something more practical, shall we? I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. for yet more of the same. Till then, have a good one.